Hey everyone, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to be adding sounds. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the screens that we have. So for our intro screen, we can go ahead and add a sound. Since we have two different effects happening at the same time, the same way we have just one broadcast play game, you only have to do it in one area. So you don't have to worry about adding it in both places, just to one of them. So you want to go inside of your Fuchsia Sound tab. You're going to click on Start Sound and put it right above the Set Ghost. Once you do, you're going to go ahead and go into your Sound tab, click on Choose a Sound. You want to go ahead and click on Effects because you want something short, because it is just going to be clicked and the intro screen is going to hide it automatically, so you want a short sound. If there's no sound here that you like, you can always go into loops that had a little bit of a longer sound. Click on the long sound that you want, and you can go ahead and play what area you want. And if you figure out, okay, so I kind of want actually from here to here this sound, I can delete the rest of it so that it's shorter. And so that it doesn't end abruptly, I can add a fade. Okay. And this way it creates a nice little short sound for me that I can go ahead and use. So I'm going to go back into code, I'm going to go back to the sound that I added, and I'm going to swap it out for my new sound. So this is specifically the sound that's going to play when you click on your intro screen. The next thing that we can go ahead and do is we can go onto our windscreen for those of us who have it. And same thing again, so we're going to go ahead and above this Set Ghost to one of these, we're going to add a Start Sound. We're going to go inside of the Sound tab. We're going to go ahead and choose another sound that's different, that has a little bit more of a winning sound that we want to use. Once we do, we're going to go back into code, and we're going to go ahead and swap it. Next, we're going to do the same thing to our losing sound. So we're going to go ahead and add a Start Sound right underneath the When I Receive Game Over. And we're going to do the same thing to find the sound that we want to use for this. Now that we're done with that, the next sound that we want to go ahead and add is going to be all inside of our ball sprite. So if you go ahead and click on that, we have a couple areas that we can add sound. So the first time that we can add sound is going to be over here, which is going to be if touching paddle, then play the sound. Now, instead of adding a start sound, we're going to actually add a play sound until done. Because this if is inside of the forever, if you use a start sound, it'll just play it over and over and over again really quickly, instead of just playing it the one time. So we're going to add a play sound until done. You can go back to the sound tab and pick the sound that we want. If you guys want a sound to be played if the ball touches the left, right, and top areas of the game, you can add a play sound until done here and here. Okay. The last place we can go ahead and add a sound is going to be when our ball touches the bottom area where they're not supposed to. So we're going to add a play sound until done. Go again back into the sound tab, and we're trying to look for a short sound that tells the player that they've lost. So I'm going to use this sound. Again, it's always good to play the sound, make sure if it's too loud or too soft to change the volume of it, and you can do that right here, so you can make it louder or softer. It's kind of up to you. You can go back into code, and then you can go ahead and swap it out. The next place that we're going to go is going to be on our brick sprite. So we're going to click on it here. And we're looking for this code right here when I start as a clone. Right underneath the go to front layer, we're going to add a start sound. There's already a sound here for us, which is a snapping sound, which is the old sound from the older game that we're making this game based on. But if you do not want this sound, you can always, again, go into your sound tab, look for a sound that you actually want to use, and then go ahead and change it. Once you're done with this, the very last sound that we're going to go ahead and add is going to be our background sound. So we're going to go onto our stage. You can actually even add this here if we want. But we're just going to make a separate code just to make it easier for you guys to see. So inside the yellow events tab, we're going to use when I receive play game. I'm going to then go into the sound tab. Now this is up to you guys. If you guys want the sound to loop over and over, you're going to add a forever, and inside of the forever, you're going to add a play sound until done. Then you can go find a sound inside of loops that's nice and long, and then you can have the sound play over and over again. If you want to have two sounds, you can always have one underneath the other, so that when one sound is done playing, the next sound will play, and then it's going to loop back and play all the sounds again. If you do not want the sounds to loop over and over again, all you need to do instead is add a start sound. You can still find a nice long sound that you guys want to use for it. And the same thing, if you want to use another one, you can go ahead and add one right underneath. So you can add these two start sounds if that's how you guys want it to be. Or you can also add a play sound until done. Either way, you'll still do the same thing as long as it's not inside of a forever that you're adding the start sound inside. So since I want my sound to loop, I'm going to add a forever. Go into the sound tab, click on choose a sound, go into loop since they're a little bit longer, find a sound that I like, and then go into the code and come back and change it. Now there are final two options for everyone, and this part is optional. All the sounds that you guys have, what you guys can do is, again, you guys can play around with any of these little different features that Scratch has in order to change the sound and make it more of a sound that you actually want to use for your game. Another option for this is also you guys can go ahead and go into YouTube. You guys can go through any of the older playlists and kind of see how you can download sounds from it and then put it inside of Scratch. We're just hovering over choose a sprite and then uploading it from your computer. And then you can find other sounds that you might like more, and then you can bring it into this game, and you guys can go ahead and use that instead. The last thing that you guys can do is you guys can balance the sounds. And what I mean by this is some sounds you want them to be louder than others, and some sounds you want it to be lower than others. So an example of this is going to be our background. Right now my background is probably going to be the same volume as all my other effects. And I may not want that. So I'm going to go into the sound tab. I'm going to add a set volume on top of this. I'm going to go ahead and change this to maybe a 40 so that it's nice and I can still hear it, but it's not so loud that I'm not able to hear my sound effects, because my player actually wants to hear when they lose or when they get a point. They don't want to hear the sound too loud, the background sound too loud. So you guys can go ahead and go through all the areas that you added your sound. So for example, inside of the ball, and I can add a set volume right on top of it, and I can go ahead and play around with it. So since my background is at 40, maybe I want to go ahead and make this 60, and I can play around with which sounds I want to be louder than others. So maybe the loudest sound I actually want is when my ball touches the brick, because that's when my player wins a point. And the other loudest sound that I want is when the player touches the bottom, which is when they lose a point. Everything else that are other sound effects, like touching the sides, can be a little bit lower because they're not too important, unlike getting a point or losing. And then I want the lowest sound to still be the background because I want my sound effects to be heard. You guys can play your game and test out everything to make sure it's working. You can hear everything. And once you're done, you're pretty much all set for week 4 core.